They were the Dark One's chosen, the greatest traitors the Age of Legends ever produced. 13 men and women who turned their backs on the light and reshaped the world in terror and fire. But the wheel turns, and even the most powerful villains must meet their end. Who was burned out? Who died twice? Who survived? Barely? You've seen their schemes, their disguises, and their twisted philosophies. Now it's time to pull back the veil and uncover the final fate of each Forsaken. Because in the Wheel of Time, not even immortality guarantees survival. Moghedien, the weakest in raw power among the Forsaken, survives longer than almost all the others, not because of strength, but because of caution. Her name means spider, and it fits. She weaves webs in the shadows, strikes only when her target is unprepared, and flees at the first sign of danger. Where others are bold, she is methodical. Where they die in fire, she endures in silence. Her influence in the world is massive and largely unseen. She interferes with Nynaeve, infiltrates the Black Aja, and poisons events across continents. Her capture by Nynaeve is one of the series' most satisfying reversals. A woman of the shadow outwitted and enslaved by the very system she once used to control others. Bound by an Adam, she is reduced to a tool, forced to act as Merrigan, a lowly servant of Elaine and Nynaeve. She later escapes, returned to the Shadow's embrace, but she never regains her former stature. In the last battle, she is finally leashed once again, this time by Moghedien and later Sindang. Her end is symbolic, the spider caught in someone else's web, a creature of fear undone by fear itself. Moghedien survives, but it's not a triumph. Her survival is pitiful small. In a world ending in fire and glory, she slips away as a chained ghost, forgotten, powerless, and completely eclipsed by those she once feared. Lanfear. Lanfear's fall began long before she joined the Forsaken. Once mere an Aeronail, she was the brilliant mind who bored a hole in the pattern, trying to touch the source of power beyond the One Power, the Dark One's prison. She opened the door to evil, not out of malice, but out of unquenchable ambition. Her love for Luz Theron Telemann twisted into obsession, and when he turned from her, she turned to the shadow. Her vanity, unmatched beauty, and tempestuous passion made her both seductive and profoundly dangerous. Lanfear's role in the series shifts constantly, from manipulator of Rand to rival of the other Forsaken. Her death, or first death, comes in the fires of heaven, where she and Moraine fall through the Terangrial gateway into the realm of the Elfin and Elfin. Moraine's fate is suspended, but Lanfear is not so lucky. She dies, or is remade. The Dark One resurrects her as Sindang, a shell of her former self, weaker in the power, stripped of much of her former autonomy, and bound even more tightly to his will. As Sindang, she continues to influence the last battle, but the fiery independence that once made her formidable has been dulled. Her obsession with Rand remains, but it becomes her undoing. Her ultimate fate is entrapment, downed by Moghedien's Adam after the Battle of Mariler, and turned into a weapon against her will. For a woman who once wielded such fierce freedom, to unleashed and controlled is a brutal irony. Lanfear wanted to be loved and feared in equal measure. Instead, she became a pawn, her brilliance muted by the very force she once embraced. Graendal. Graendal was once Camariel Moradam Ninder, a psychologist and scholar in the Age of Legends. But where others used knowledge to heal, she used it to manipulate. Under the shadow, she became the ultimate seductress, bending minds with her mastery of compulsion and surrounding herself with beautiful enslaved pets of once great leaders. Her fortress, her habits, even her clothes were designed to provoke and dominate. She didn't want armies. She wanted influence, secrets, control from within. Graendal's cunning made her one of the most dangerous Forsaken. She didn't challenge Rand directly but orchestrated assassinations, puppeted nobles, and subtly destabilized kingdoms. But her overconfidence cost her dearly. Rand, in a rare moment of ruthless decisiveness, used balefire to erase her and her lair in the Gathering Storm. For readers, it seemed like the end, brutal and final. Yet it wasn't. The Dark One revived her as Hesselong. without forgiveness, and the transformation was cruel. Her beauty stripped away, her name an insult, her role now that of a broken manipulator serving Moghedien's will. Still, she was dangerous. During the last battle, she used compulsion on Androl and Pivara's circle, nearly turning the tide. But her downfall came not from a blast of power, but from her own arrogance. Androl, in one of the series' most satisfying reversals, trapped her with a weave she couldn't unravel. Hessalem's fate is not death, but imprisonment. Bound, powerless, and surrounded by those she once sought to enslave, Graendal ends the series alive but defeated. And for a woman who lived to dominate others, that may be the most poetic punishment of all. Rahvin, master of manipulation and illusion, wields his talents with deadly precision. He doesn't spread terror through armies or open war. He does it through seduction and control. Taking over the mind of Queen Morghedien of Andor, he places himself at the heart of one of the most important thrones in the Westlands. While the world fears the Dragon Reborn and the Shadow's armies, Rahvin quietly turns Andor into a puppet state under his will. He plays the long game, using compulsion with terrifying efficiency. Morghedien, once proud and sharp, is reduced to a husk of herself. Her court bows to his every command. Through Rahvin's hands, Andor becomes a warning of what the Forsaken can do when no one is watching. But his hubris dooms him. Rand confronts him in fires of heaven in a confrontation that blends brute power with emotional stakes. Rahvin nearly wins, tricking and baiting Rand in the world of dreams and almost killing Mat, Avienda, and Asmodean. But Rand, wielding balefire in a moment of pure fury and grief, unravels time itself. The moment Mat dies, Rand unweaves the pattern backward with such force that Rahvin is utterly erased from existence. Not just killed, but undone. Rahvin's end is more than a defeat, it's a reset. His power is turned against him. The illusion he lived in, the belief that he was untouchable, always in control, is burned away with fire so hot that history forgets he was ever there at all. Sammael, once known as Tel Janin Alensar, was a master of war in the Age of Legends. A battlefield genius with a deep inferiority complex, he lived in the shadow of Luz Theron and despised him with every fiber of his being. His hatred was more than personal, it was existential. Sammael needed victory not just to defeat his enemies, but to prove that he was better than the man the world had once called the Dragon. Throughout the series, Sammael plays a long tactical game. He takes control of Ilion and rules it with an iron hand, embedding himself in the world's politics rather than sowing overt chaos. Unlike others among the Forsaken, he avoids direct confrontation with Rand, preferring to manipulate events from behind a fortress of caution. He sees recklessness in his fellow Chosen and prides himself on survival and strategic control. But that very caution becomes his doom. When Rand finally turns his attention to Ilion in a crown of swords, the confrontation is swift and savage. Sammael retreats to Shadar Logoth, thinking himself clever for using the corrupted city as a battleground. But he doesn't account for what lurks there. In a single shocking moment, Shadar Logoth's sentient, malevolent mist devours him. It's not Rand who kills him, but the place itself. Sammael dies screaming, consumed not by light or shadow, but by a power that hates both. His end is tragic and ironic, a general undone by his own strategic arrogance, falling in a city that mirrored his soul, corrupted, hollow, and filled with nothing but hate. Below, known as the Envious, remains one of the most mysterious Forsaken. He appears only briefly in the series, taking up residence in Tear and manipulating the nation's politics to place himself near Kalandor. Like so many of the Chosen, he desires power, but his focus is razor-sharp. He wants the sword in the stone, the sangreal in the heart of the stone, believing it will elevate him above the others. His plan is quiet, calculated, and, like Sammael's, rooted in waiting for the perfect moment. But Below makes one fatal mistake. He underestimates Moghedien the Spider. In The Dragon Reborn, Rand faces Below in the heart of the stone. The Forsaken nearly wins, using skill and speed that overwhelm even the Dragon Reborn. But before the fight can reach its conclusion, Moghedien intervenes, not with a grand battle, but with a single act of finality. She balefires him. Gone, erased, wiped from the pattern before he can even react. His death is instantaneous. One of the most powerful channelers of the Age of Legends undone, not by the hero of the story, but by a woman who understands that some threats require brutal solutions. Beel's fate serves as a stark reminder. In a world of prophecy and cosmic warfare, death can come with no fanfare, just a flash of light and a name forgotten. Ishamael. Ishamael, also known as Elin Morintedronai, was not just the most dangerous of the Forsaken. He was the most devoted to the Dark One's true purpose. Where others sought power, Ishamael sought annihilation. His belief that the wheel must be broken and the cycle of rebirth ended made him terrifying not because of his power, but because of his conviction. He didn't merely serve the shadow. He embraced its ideology fully, seeing hope and continuity as illusions. As Palazman, he plagued Rand in the early books, appearing as a seemingly omnipresent foe. His influence was subtle but pervasive, corrupting dreams, manipulating political factions, and destabilizing Rand's mental state. But when he finally confronted Rand directly at the end of The Dragon Reborn, it marked the first major confrontation between the Dragon Reborn and a Forsaken in full power. Ishamael was destroyed by Calendar, reduced a little more than ash and light, and it felt like a final death. But nothing is ever final in the service of the Dark. Ishamael was resurrected by the Dark One as Moghedien, a body reborn with enhanced strength and closer connection to the Shadow. Yet even Moghedien's might couldn't save him from what came next. In the last battle, Rand confronted him again, but this time on a different battlefield, one of ideology. Rand won not with strength, but with understanding, and as their souls touched, fused, split, and changed, it marked the end of Ishamael for good. A man who wanted oblivion, granted it at last, but not before becoming the shadow of Rand's own darkest impulses. Asmodean. Asmodean is perhaps the most tragic and reviled of the Forsaken, not because of his deeds, but because of what he becomes. Born Jor Adam Nesosin, he was a musician in the Age of Legends, driven by vanity and a craving for eternal fame. When that wasn't enough, he turned to the shadow, trading morality for immortality. But when we meet him, centuries later, he's no conqueror. He's a survivor, bitter and weary, more interested in staying alive than in glory. When Rand captures him and uses Lanfear's help to sever his ties to the Dark One, Asmodean becomes something unique, a Forsaken who serves the light, sort of. Stripped of his full strength and forced to tutor Rand in secret, he walks a razor's edge between fear and usefulness. He wants safety, but knows he'll never be trusted. He helps Rand, but always with one eye on the shadows. And then he dies. Suddenly, off-page. In the fires of heaven, we find his body and get no immediate answer. The murder becomes one of the series' most enduring mysteries for years. The killer isn't revealed until Towers of Midnight, when it's confirmed to have been Graendal, acting preemptively to silence a traitor. But by then, Asmodean's story is already a footnote. His death is ignoble, his arc unresolved. A man who sought survival at any cost meets the one thing he never planned for, irrelevance. And that for Asmodean might have been the cruelest ending of all. Balthimmel and Aginor. Balthimmel and Aginor are Forsaken who barely make an impression before dying, only to return in forms that reintroduce them as deeper, more insidious threats. Both are present at the eye of the world, where their first lives end in chaos and humiliation. Aginor, once a scientist obsessed with pushing the limits of power, attempts to seize the raw energy of the eye itself, but is destroyed by it. Balthimmel, more physical and twisted by his long imprisonment, dies at the hands of the Green Man in one of the series' most unexpected sacrifices. But death isn't the end for either of them. The Dark One resurrects Aginor as Osangar and Balthimmel as Erangar, and their new bodies add another layer to their character arcs. Osangar is placed among the Ashamen, hidden in plain sight as the Shiva, a seemingly scatterbrained male channeler, with alarming outbursts of power and untrustworthy behavior. His mission is to sabotage from within, but his erratic nature leads to suspicion, and his usefulness burns out quickly. In the Battle of the Cleansing at Shadar Logoth, he dies a second time, this time bale-fired, erased from the pattern by Elsa Penfell in a moment of chaos. Forgotten again, his second death is even less dignified than his first. Arangar's resurrection is even more provocative. Balthamel is reborn in a female body that can still channel Satan, creating a unique dynamic in a world defined by gendered magic. As Arangar, she infiltrates Egwene's rebel camp under the name Halima, serving as the secretary to the Amirlan seed, while giving her debilitating headaches and nightmares. She is seductive, manipulative, and deadly, an assassin hiding behind a servant's smile. Her end comes during the last battle when she is killed by the combined forces of Aes Sedai and Asha'man. Their story is one of transformation, but not redemption. Reborn by the Dark One, they bring no wisdom from death, only deeper deception. And the second time around, their ends are swift, unceremonious, and deserved. Mesaana. Mesaana is the most subtle of the Forsaken, a woman of scholarly ambition who sought domination not through armies, but through institutions. In the Age of Legends, she was a researcher denied academic promotion. In bitterness, she turned to the shadow, and under its banner, she finally gained the authority she craved. In the Third Age, she sets her sights on the White Tower, not to destroy it, but to bend it. Her disguise within the tower is never revealed explicitly to readers, but her influence is unmistakable. The Ajas become more divided, Aleda's rule grows erratic, and internal strife reaches a boiling point. It's Mesaana who manipulates the tower into civil war, destabilizing one of the world's last great bastions of light. Her genius lies in subtlety. While the others burn kingdoms, she infects their centers. But her pride becomes her downfall. During Egwene's defense of the White Tower from Tzeentch attack and the Forsaken's infiltration, Mesaana attempts to assert control in Tel'aran'rhiod, the world of dreams. Egwene, despite being outmatched in raw strength, defeats her through sheer will. She doesn't kill Mesaana physically. She breaks her mind, cracks her self-image so violently that the Forsaken's identity collapses. Mesaana survives the last battle, but not in any meaningful sense. She is reduced to a childlike state, her mind fractured beyond repair. For a woman who thought herself the architect of the world's future, to become a helpless echo of her former self is a fate worse than death. Final thoughts. The Forsaken were never just villains. They were reflections of ambition, pride, pain, obsession, and fear. Each one represented a path that could have been taken by anyone, including our heroes. What makes their ends so compelling isn't just how they died. It's what those deaths say about the world Robert Jordan built. In Wheel of Time, power isn't what determines survival. Ideology, conviction, mercy, and choice do. Some died in fire, others were unraveled by balefire, and a few fell to their own fears. But none of them escaped the pattern entirely. Even in death, they served its turning. And in that, their tragedy is complete. They sought to defy destiny and were destroyed by it. Because in the end, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, even for the chosen.